Facebook ads targeting can be incredibly confusing. And in this video, I'm going to clear all that up. I'm going to show you how to create and use all the targeting options that we regularly use as a Facebook ads agency, and I'm going to show you which ones you should use and when. So to put together this ultimate Facebook ads targeting tutorial and demonstrate all the stuff I'm about to show you, I'm in an example Facebook ad account. I'm in Ads Manager, and I've just gone and quickly created a sort of dummy leads campaign, and I'm gonna use this as an example to walk you through. What I'm about to talk about though absolutely applies to sales campaigns and other campaign objectives. A lot of the targeting principles and strategies are very much applicable across the board depending on what type of campaign you're running. There are different strategies you need to use depending on your business, but we'll talk about those later on, okay? So I've created a quick example leads campaign, and what we're gonna do is jump over to the ad set level because that's where we set up our targeting. I'm gonna select this ad set, click edit, and that's going to bring up a window where we can scroll down and get into this targeting section here. Now, a couple of things I need to quickly mention at this point. If you don't have an ad set level within your campaign that you've created, that's probably because you selected the tailored campaign option when you created your campaign. For the purposes of this, I'd recommend you don't do that. So if you've done that already, just delete that one and create a new campaign and go ahead and select manual settings, manual campaign setup, and that'll give you that ad set level where you can do your targeting. It's a little bit more complicated with a tailored setup, okay? I'm also not going to cover all the other stuff that's you need to work out and get right at the campaign level, ad set level, etc. in this video. I've got loads of videos to talk about all that sort of stuff. Just check out my channel and you'll find a whole bunch of other options there. This is really gonna be focusing on targeting, and we've got more than enough to talk about here because there's plenty of stuff. So let's start with the basics. We scroll down to this audience section and we need to define who we're going to target. Who do we want our ads to be put in front of? Now, unless you are quite a rare business, you don't want your ads put in front of absolutely anybody and everybody. Certain people are far more likely to buy your products than others. That's the whole premise around targeting. We want to put our ads in front of those people that are far more likely to buy our products and services, okay? So the very first thing we need to decide is location. Now it'll default, as it has here, to the country in which you are located, but you can select edit, you can delete that out, you can add in different locations, and you can get really quite specific. So let's say I go ahead and get rid of that. Let's say I had a local business and I live in a town in England called Cheltenham. So I could choose, for example, just to advertise to the city only, just the city of Cheltenham, nothing around it. I could add in a bit of a radius. I could say, look, I'm happy to advertise to Cheltenham and anyone within 15 miles because I think that's what's people are willing to travel to my business, or I'm willing to travel to them that distance, depending on how it is that you're set up. But my basic recommendation around your location targeting, that's the first thing you want to do because it'll affect the rest of the stuff you do, is advertise in the places where people will buy your products and services, and don't constrain yourself. So I see a lot of businesses, let's say you're an e-commerce business and you sell to the whole of the US, right? But you think, oh, my best customers are in New York, so I'm just gonna advertise in New York. That doesn't really make sense. Meta's machine learning process is powerful enough to work out, okay, we get a lot more sales from New York, let's put a lot more ads to people in New York, but there's someone living in Texas that has interacted with this business's website or has recently been searching for products that are similar to the ones that this company sells. We think they'd also be a good prospect to put an ad in front of, therefore we're going to put an ad in front of them. I'm not a fan of restricting your geographical targeting, your location targeting, unnecessarily just because you think that's where your best prospects are. So if you can ship to the whole of your country, like if we can ship to the whole of the UK, we would absolutely be going to the whole of the UK. If we can provide a service to the whole of the UK, we would be advertising to the whole of the UK. The only time when we're going to narrow things down is when we are a local business and people just aren't going to travel into our location, or we're not willing to travel beyond a certain distance, okay? So think about that more from a business standpoint necessarily than a Facebook ad campaign optimization standpoint. If you can ship internationally, service business internationally, I own a digital advertising agency and we have clients all around the world, right? Australia, US, etc., then what I would typically do is look to advertise to multiple countries, but limit yourself there a little bit. So for example, we might advertise to typically our best performing countries, which is going to be UK, US, Canada, Australia, Ireland, New Zealand, although their populations are smaller, so we get less from those. But we might start with just those 4. Once those are working, we can look to expand to other countries because we do have clients in Germany and Singapore and South Africa and all over the world, right? We do have clients all over the world. But it's important to keep just your core demographics, especially when you start getting into many different time zones, many different languages, things get a little bit complicated. So that's the general principle around targeting. What I'm going to do for now is assume that we're advertising for a business that can just ship products in the UK or just serve customers in the UK, and go with that as the whole country as the option. Now, the reason why we set the location targeting up first is because it then influences some other decision-making processes. Because this is the first thing that we've set up within our targeting, we need to constantly be looking over here on the right-hand side at estimated audience size. It's a very important number. So you can see that when I target the whole of the UK, we've got 46 to 54 million people as the total audience size of Facebook users, Instagram users, etc. within this location. If we're going with a local business, that audience size is going to be much, much smaller. And that means that we can't be as specific with our targeting options later on in terms of what age ranges we're going to target, what interests we're going to target, because the audience size is going to get too small. We want to leave things broader if we are going more specific from a location standpoint. And likewise, if we're going international and we've got 500 million people to advertise to, or maybe more, then we can afford to potentially get really specific, because the end audience size won't be too small. Now, there are general rules of thumb around this, and I'm sort of reluctant to give them because I don't want people to sort of stick to those numbers religiously. If you find that there are options that would perform, you think might work, that fall outside these criteria, absolutely test them, nothing wrong with that. But in general, we don't like to advertise to an audience that's less than 500 million people if we can help it. On the upper side of things, we're kind of happy to go as big as there is available. I'll explain more about that later down the line. But if you think about 500 million people being your lower limit, roughly, again, for local businesses, that absolutely is not possible a lot of the time. Cheltenham's got like 100,000 people in it. If I just wanted to advertise to Cheltenham, which would be absolutely fine, I can't have a minimum audience size of 500 million. So it's going to be smaller than that. That's absolutely okay. But if you can advertise nationally, internationally, that 500 million mark it is sort of a good benchmark to not go beneath. And don't worry about an upper end when it comes to your audience size. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to talk about. Once we select our location, we then need to get into age. What age range do your customers typically fall into? I would recommend being quite generous here. So for example, as a Facebook ads agency, we might say that the majority of our customers are age, let's say 30 to 55, right? They're going to be business owners or marketing managers within, like a social media marketing manager within a company, something along those lines, making the decision-making process. So that might be our sort of typical age range, but we might want to be a bit more generous and go for something like 25 all the way up to 65 plus. And it's not a mistake necessarily to leave this age range open. That might sound a little bit crazy, but again, remember Meta's machine learning process is really clever at working out who's most likely to purchase. Is the average customer 35-year-old male? Great, let's put ads in front of mostly people that are similar to that. But if you've got a 27-year-old female or a 52-year-old female that is mostly showing signs that they might be interested in this product or service, then we can also put an ad in front of them because they might convert really well. So if in doubt, go with a broader age range, and I think you'll be better off. If you've got your typical customers at age 25 to 35, perhaps go with 18 up to 45, something along those lines, okay? Again, these things can always be adjusted. Default is all genders. You can go ahead and edit this. My recommendation here is that unless you are very heavily skewed one way, like let's say 80 to 90% one way or the other, then you can just go ahead and go with men or go with women. Otherwise, I would usually go with all. Same principle applies with the Meta machine learning process. They can work out that, okay, you're selling women's jewelry. Most people are going to buy that are going to be women, but there's also men will buy that, particularly at certain times of year because they're buying Christmas gifts and Valentine's Day gifts and things along those lines. Okay. Then we get into detailed targeting. Now, if you've made selection adjustments here, you'll see that every time you do, this changes, right? So if we go with 25 to 55, we can see that our audience size is shrinking significantly down here. If we were just wanted to advertise to women, for example, again, we can see our audience size is shrinking significantly. So just keep that in mind for this next section, which is detailed targeting. Now, there's tons of strategies to find the detailed targeting options that you want to select to work out the best possible interests and try and find those like sneaky hidden audiences that must be available when it comes to Facebook advertising. And I'm going to tell you the truth is that they don't really exist. People think there are secret hidden audiences that you can find that no one else can find. It's not really a thing. If you just don't make a bad mistake with your interest targeting, if you just go with the options that sound true, sound logical, sound like they should apply, you're probably going to be just fine. So that's normally what I'd recommend that most advertisers do. So if, for example, we were advertising our Facebook ads agency, we would just start searching for terms that are closely related and then targeting people that are interested in that. So for example, if Facebook advertising, I know from experience searching is too specific, that wouldn't come up. But if we were to go with something like social media marketing, as an example, we could go ahead, we don't want job titles. We may do if we're looking to advertise those people specifically, but most businesses in this space are going to more go with people that are interested in that, because that's going to reach the business owners and things like that as well. Okay, so social media marketing might be an example. We might have things like digital marketing, again, as an interest, as opposed to, you know, the digital marketing strategist as a job title. So you can start searching all sorts of things that are related to your business, right? For example, if I was starting a dog walking business, I would start entering in things like dog, and you could just have people interested in dogs. That seems like a logical option to do. You might have things like dog walking, dog groomer. These are job titles, but you can have interests, dog walking, dogs, as an interest. You could test these various options. So it's not rocket science. Add some things into this suggestions option that are closely related to what you sell, and come up with a list of maybe 10, 15, sometimes it's gonna be more, sometimes it's gonna be less, of options that make sense, that seem relevant. You know, for dog walking business, we're gonna advertise to people that are interested in dogs, advertise to people that are interested in dog walking. Fairly straightforward, right? So what I do is come up with a list of 10 to 15 options, sort of set those aside for now, just select the one, particularly if this is the first time you run an ad campaign, just select the one interest in here, and then let's say we're going with dog walking, we'll go with that, and then test that. You can test it alongside other options. I'll explain more about that later on. You can start to work out which one's going to produce the best results for you and go with those over the long run. Okay. I'm not going to talk about excluding or narrowing down audiences. It's not something we do regularly, and it's not normally something that we'd recommend. It's kind of an advanced technique, but as I said, we don't do it because we don't find there's that much utility. So I'm not going to cover that in this video. I don't think it's useful for the vast majority of people watching. Advantage detailed targeting is something that's turned on. Previously, I was quite keen to turn this off. What this setting means is that we're saying to Meta, look, I want to advertise to people that are interested in dog walking. But if you think there are people that aren't necessarily included within that category of interest in dog walking that might be interested in my dog walking services, then you can go ahead and advertise to other people on top of that. This is getting better and better. Meta's machine learning process and AI algorithms that work out who to put your ads in front of are getting more sophisticated. So I don't think it's a big mistake to leave this on. But for me personally, during the testing phase, I like to remove it. I like to just advertise to people that are interested in walking dogs in this case, and then I can test that properly against the other options and see which performs best. Estimated audience size is coming in at 9.5 million to 11 million. That's absolutely fine. It's a really good chunk of the UK population, which is unsurprising because tons of people have dogs, but we might have it set up something like this. As I said, if you want to leave this on, it's not the end of the world by any means. And if you end up selecting something here that's quite specific and the audience size is smaller, I'd be more likely to leave advantage detailed targeting on, okay? All languages. In the UK, that's probably what we'd go with, but let's say you were advertising in a location where there are lots of languages or a couple of different languages that have really big bases, like if you're advertising in Canada, for example, and you only wanted to reach the French-speaking part of Canada, that's absolutely fine. You can go ahead and put French in there and get more specific with your languages, okay? So those are the basic targeting options when it comes to location, demographic, and interest. And that's how we would look to set things up. And we would usually, as I said, we would create that list of 10 to 15 different interest targeting options, and we would then work our way through those. We would test them. We would run an ad set with dog walking. We would run an ad set with dogs. We would run an ad set, people interested in dog food and pet supplies. That might be another, there's all sorts of things that we could test within that niche that might be appropriate, and we go ahead and get that done. This stuff here is relatively straightforward. It's just a case of don't mess it up as opposed to really getting it right. What I mean by messing it up usually is just targeting a really small audience. If you go, look, my target market is only 21. I'm only gonna advertise to 21-year-old women that are also interested in dog walking. You can see our audience size is starting to get really quite small. And this would be a good example of messing it up, particularly if you then went and compounded it and said, then they only live in Manchester. So we're only gonna target 21-year-old women in Manchester that are interested in dog walking. It's just too small, too specific. Better to give Facebook a lot more flexibility and freedom and things along those lines. Okay, now it's time to get into some more advanced stuff, some more exciting stuff that we do use as an agency all the time. Before I do that, I just want to quickly mention our done for you Facebook and Instagram advertising services. So we can create, manage, optimize your campaigns, work out all your targeting and everything else to do with your Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns to get you the best possible results and take that workload off your hands. If you are interested, you can book a free call with one of my team members. There is a link in the video description below that'll take you to a page on our website where you can go ahead and book in a free, no obligation call. You can find out more about our service. We can find out more about your product services, what you offer. We've probably worked with a business like yours in the past. We've worked with hundreds of different businesses, run thousands of different campaigns at this point. We've got a ton of experience and really know what we're doing. So if you're interested, go ahead and book a call and hopefully we get a chance to work together. So now it's time to get into some more advanced stuff and some really cool Facebook advertising features that you probably want to take advantage of. So if we scroll back up to this section here that we sort of just skipped over before, this custom audiences section. And if we hover over this little eye, you'll see that Meta give us a definition. This says, use custom audiences to reach people who have already interacted with your business, and then it goes on to talk about lookalike audiences. That's a separate thing. But people who have already interacted with our business are warm audiences. We're talking about retargeting it. We're talking about being able to put ads in front of people that have already interacted with our business previously. Now, I can basically guarantee that your retargeting audiences will produce the best results from a return on ad spend, return on investment standpoint than advertising to cold audiences, because people that have already visited our website or are on our email list or have watched a video of ours on Facebook, they are far more likely to be interested in what we have to offer than people who haven't taken any of those steps. So absolutely something that you want to go ahead and set up, get your custom audience set up so we can then retarget. And I'm going to walk you through the various options and how to get all this set up now. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to come out of Ads Manager, click on these three little lines, all tools, and instead go into audiences. I've got it up here in the shortcuts. You might have it down under manage business, but you'll definitely have that option. Click on audiences, and here's where we create the custom audiences. Now, I deleted out all the custom audiences that were in here so I could sort of create these and demonstrate it and go through the process. So if we click on create a custom audience. Now, the first type of custom audience that I want to, before we get into types of custom audience, what I want to do is first tell you about the two different sources of custom audience. So we've got your sources up here. So these are people that have interacted with your business outside of the Meta family of apps, so outside of Facebook, outside of Instagram, and you can take that information, use that data, and upload it into Meta and then target those people. This section down here, Meta sources, includes all the options that are based on actions that people have taken within the Meta family of apps. So within Facebook, within Instagram. That'll make more sense as we go through. So let's start with your sources, and we're going to cover the most common options that we will use when working with a business and when we're looking to target. So the first one's going to be website. Okay, so if we go ahead and select website and then click next. Now, to do this, you will need to have the Facebook pixel, the Meta pixels as it's now called, installed on your website. If you don't already have that, you don't have it set up, I'll include a link in the video description below to another video that shows you exactly how to get all that set up and everything like that. But assuming you do have the pixel installed on your website, you can then create a custom audience from people that have visited your website. And that's great because people who visited your website are far more likely to be interested in buying, inquiring, whatever it is you want them to do than people who haven't. So we want to take advantage of that. You can go with all website visitors, which is the default, or you can get really very specific. So you could go ahead and select people who visited specific pages. So my business, for example, we offer Facebook ads and we offer Google ads as a done for you service. So we could, for example, if we wanted to only advertise to people interested in the Google ad service, we could say, anyone who has visited the heathmedia.co.uk /Google ads, I believe is the URL, our main page on our website about that. We could add that in. So it's URL equals this. So anyone who has visited this page, create a specific custom audience out of those people because we know they're interested in Google ads, and then we can retarget them with an ad, a retargeting ad saying, hey, if you're interested in Google ad services, here's what it costs, here's how it works, all the stuff that you might want to do in a retargeting ad, right? You could also do contain. So if you've got like a category on your website, for example, let's say you sell hats and shoes and you had a whole category of hats. So you've got hats in the URL in the category, and you wanted to put together like a catalog ad of lots of different hats and advertise to those people, and then a catalog ads of different shoes and advertise it to the people who visited the shoes related page on the website, you can do that. You can do all sorts of really cool stuff in here. You can also go one step further. Now, I said I wouldn't talk about it in the previous section, the exclude, narrow further and things like that, because I think it gets complicated at that stage. But once you're getting into these custom audiences, this is where you might want to do it. So let's say, for example, we wanted to advertise to people that had signed up for our webinar, but not yet gone on to purchase our course. You're selling an online course and you've got a webinar funnel. So you could have something like, let's advertise to people that have visited our URL that contains webinar. Let's assume you've got webinar in the URL. You'd have to set this up and make sure you got this right. Or you could just do equals and then pop whatever page it is they watch the webinar on, you pop that in here. And we want to exclude people that, again, click on people who visited specific web pages that have already purchased. So let's say if they visited a URL that's got thank you on it, the only URLs that have thank you on our website are ones where people have actually gone ahead and bought. And what that does is it creates a custom audience of people who have visited the webinar page, but not yet bought, because we're excluding all the people that have bought. Hopefully that makes sense. So you can have a play around with these, you can further refine people, you can exclude other people, and you can create all these different layers of custom audience and have a good play with this. I'm going to delete this out for now because it's not something that most advertisers are going to want to do. In fact, most advertisers are just going to want to go ahead with all website visitors. And I'll quickly explain some of the other options. You can also do visitors by time spent. So you've got 25%, 10%, 5%. So these are, if we go with 25%, we'd be advertising to the people that have been on our website longest that fit into 25% of the overall people that have been on there most, if that makes sense. Here we've got the 10% that have been on our website the longest. Here, the 5% that have been on our website the longest. That is an option, just something to be aware of. This could be really important if you are if you've been sending people to like a blog post or something and you really want them to read it before you then retarget, because it's going to help inform their buying, their decision-making process. Perhaps it's really advocating for a certain way of doing things, and then you know that if they've spent a lot of time on your website, they've seen information about that, that's great. You can then retarget them. Otherwise, you don't really want to do it, okay? And one other thing, actually, from your events. So we've only got add to cart set up on this. This is an example Facebook ad account. So there's not all the various conversion events set up. So we've only got add to cart, but you would often have purchase and add to cart and initiate checkout and leads and things like that. So you could specifically, this is a custom audience specifically of people that have added to cart. That might be a custom audience you really want to run. Oh, we want to target everyone who's added to cart. Oh, we do want to exclude people that have, we don't have it set up, but we could exclude people that have triggered the purchase conversion event because we just want to capture those people that added to cart but didn't quite get over the line. We can put an ad in front of them again and get them to take that next step, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. But as I keep saying, the thing that most advertisers want to go with is all website visitors, and I'd recommend, you can see this retention is 30 days. So that's all website visitors 30 days into the past from today. And that will dynamically change. So that audience will be slightly different tomorrow because it's going 30 days into the past from tomorrow. Same the next day, same the next day. And in 60 days time, it's a completely different audience, right? With retention, there's a trade-off here. The longer the retention window, the more people you have in this custom audience. And in general, the larger the custom audience, the better it performs. But in theory, the shorter the retention window, the warmer those people are going to be. If you only advertise, for example, to people that have visited your website in the last 2 days, you're probably going to be much more top of mind. It's going to be a lot fresher. They're more likely to be interested. Whereas if you advertise to someone that visited your website 2 months ago, well, maybe they bought a competitor's product and they don't need yours anymore. You never know, right? However, this again is a situation where I would recommend that you rely on Meta's algorithms to work it out. So I like to go with maximum retention. If you hover over, you'll see that Meta gives some information about this. And for different custom audiences, they have different maximum times, just to make it confusing. But with website custom audiences, it is 180 days, roughly 6 months, right? So I would go with the maximum, and here's why. Meta knows that the people that visited your website 3 days ago are much warmer than someone that visited your website 5 months ago. So they are going to start by advertising to the really warm prospects. And then once those have been exhausted, then we're going to advertise to people that are slightly less warm that visited a long time ago. Again, because remember, Meta might know, based on someone's web activity, that you sell, I don't know, oven trays, for example. And someone visited your website 5 months ago, not that warm a prospect, but they've just been searching around various things for oven trays. They visited a competitor's website or Facebook page. Maybe they're thinking about buying. This would be a good time to put an ad in front of them and get that sale because they're in a buying mood. And you don't want to miss out on those people. It makes a big difference. So I go with all website visitors, 180 days. You just want to give your custom audience a name. So all website visitors. And in terms of naming, obviously, whenever it's naming anything, campaigns, ad sets, custom audiences, just name it something where you can glance at it without having to go into it and you know what it is. It's just a time saver for when you have lots of different custom audiences, lots of different campaigns and things like that. So all website visitors, 180 days, pretty simple, right? Go ahead and click on create audience. Okay, and you could create, as I've said, lots of different types of website visitor custom audiences, break it down by people who've visited certain pages, break it down by people who've spent time, certain actions, all that sort of stuff. There's loads of fun stuff there to be getting on with. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new custom audience. So we've just talked about website and the various permutations. The next one I'll talk about is customer list. Now it says customer list, but you can think of this as two different types of custom audiences. You can think of it as customer list, so people who have bought from you previously, but also email list, people who haven't bought from you previously, but perhaps have signed up to your newsletter or opted in for a webinar, and you've got marketing permissions to be able to email them and all that sort of stuff. You can include those sorts of things in here. Now, if you use MailChimp, and that's what you use as your email service provider, you can just literally click on import from MailChimp. It'll then get you to log into your MailChimp account. You will then just select which list you want to upload. You click on it, boom, done. Super straightforward. Okay, so I'm not going to demonstrate that because it's really, really easy. If you're not using MailChimp or you have the information stored somewhere else, you'd use a different email service provider, a different CRM. What you can do is just export an Excel document or a CSV file, TXT CSV file, from wherever it is you've got that data stored, and all sort of email service providers and thing, where they'll allow you to export that information. And then you can go ahead and come into here, click next, and then you get to upload this list. And I'll show you how to do that now because it can be a little bit complicated. So before you get to the uploading, what you need to do is you need to tell Meta, do you have a value column? This only really applies to a customer list, not an email list from people who haven't bought. But with a customer list, you may have data around what each person's spent with you. If you do, you want to go ahead and click yes, because that's really useful information for Meta to see, because they can see, okay, not only have these people bought from this business before, but certain people spent a lot more money. And then when you go to use that audience for retargeting, they're going to prioritize the people that spend more money. When you use it for things like lookalikes, they're going to prioritize creating audiences of people that are similar to the higher spenders as opposed to just similar to previous customers. There is a difference there, and that's important. So if you've got a value column, click yes. In this example, I don't, so I'm just going to go ahead and click no. And then you just simply upload a list. Okay, so I've just uploaded this example email list. Very, very straightforward. Upload it in there. You can obviously give it a name. I'm just going to call it example email list, but if you had different options, you would want to get more specific with this. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then what we need to do is map the information within our CSV file with information that makes sense to Meta, right? Okay, so let me give you an example. So in this list, all I've got is first name Ben, and then email ben@example.com. Okay, so Meta has worked out that this column, ben@example.com, is email. They've worked that out for us. Great. But they haven't worked out the name Ben. Okay, so I can either choose to not upload that data, or I can just say, oh, by the way, that is a first name. And you can see that there are lots of different options. So depending on what data you have, you just go through and say, this column is this information, this column is this information, this column is this information. And that's really important, because what Meta does is they take this information here, so name, email, that sort of stuff, and they match it to people's Facebook and Instagram profiles, and that's what allows you to run ads to them. I know that this data isn't always going to correlate. So for example, people might be using a different email address now to what they originally used to sign up to Instagram with, in which case Meta's going to have a harder time matching those people. So match rates typically, let's say 50%. You're not going to get everyone, it's not perfect, but it's certainly better than not going through these steps and not using it at all. It's also why I'd recommend that I've only got name and email address in this because it's an example one, but when you are uploading data, customer lists or email lists into Meta, it's best to have as much information as possible, because the more information you have, the more likely they are to match the person on your list to someone's actual Facebook, Instagram profile, so that you can then advertise to them. Okay, so we just then go ahead and click import and create, uploads in process, and boom, we're all done. So you could do that process with an example email list and a customer list, and we would usually create two separate options. We create an email list and create a customer list because there are times when we want to advertise to people who haven't bought from us previously, times when we want to advertise to both, times when we only want to advertise that have bought from us previously. We might have like a loyalty repeat purchase scheme or something like that, in which case previous customers are great, but definitely get both of these uploaded. I get a lot of pushback from Facebook advertisers that don't want to advertise to people that have already purchased from them previously. I think that is a little bit short-sighted and a little bit naive. They think it's a waste of money. I just think people aren't walking around in life thinking about your business. They're thinking about all the things going on in their life. Have you ever had the experience where you've been to a restaurant, it was fantastic, you think we'll go there again, loads, and then you just completely forget about it, and then someone else brings it up in a conversation 2 years later, or you drive past it for some reason, you go, oh yeah, I forgot about that place. It's just like that, right? I forgot about that place, you needed a reminder. We can do that with ads. We can be that friend saying, oh, I went to that fantastic Mexican restaurant. Isn't the food awesome? Let's go there again. You can do that by retargeting previous customers. So just wanted to sort of nip that thought process in the bud because I hear that from a lot of people and I think it is incorrect. Okay, so we've got a couple of different custom audiences in there. If we go ahead and to the next one, so create audience, custom audience. There are, of course, other options in here. Things like catalog, it's definitely one you want to use if you're an e-commerce business using something like Shopify. App activity, definitely something you want to use if you've got an app. But the majority of businesses probably aren't going to be using these. Maybe catalog if there are a lot of e-commerce business owners watching, but everyone's going to want to use website and customer list. Okay, so I'm going to go with the ones that I said we use basically all the time as an agency, not every single little edge case. Otherwise, this video would be about 6 hours long. Okay, so let's move on to the meta sources. So the first one we've got in the list is video. So let's start here. Now, what you will find with the meta sources is that because it takes place within the apps, the tracking, so you know I said how the email list, the match rate was about 50%. So if you upload an email list of 2,000 people, you probably only get 1,000 people in your custom audience. That is not true with the meta sources because it's in app, so the data is basically perfect. And also, the barrier to entry with these actions is much lower. So for a business that has, I don't know, 1,000 people that have visited their website from their Facebook ads, they might have 15,000 video views on Facebook and Instagram in order to get that 1,000. Maybe it's more, who knows what your click-through rate is, right? So these audiences are much larger and that's great because as I said, the larger the custom audience, the better. So when we come in here, the first thing we need to do is it says choose a content type, which is a little bit misleading because the first thing that you do is select how much of the video or videos someone needs to have watched in order to be included in here. Now, there is a trade-off as I've discussed here before, okay? So if you want the largest audience possible, then you want to go with this 3 seconds of your video because that's going to contain the most people by far. Far more people are going to watch 3 seconds of your video than 95% of it, most likely. But the people who have watched 95%, those are the really warm ones, the more specific ones. So you're trying to find that balancing act. Here I like to go with something like 25% if it's a short video. If it's a longer video, then we'd usually go with what's called a through play, so roughly 15 seconds. Or depending if it's really short, there's going to be a shorter one. But those would be the two options that we typically go with. Obviously, you don't want 25% if you're advertising a really long video because that's going to contain far fewer people. I do think that whereas with the website visitor audience, we erred on the side of, well, let's just make it as big as possible and let Facebook work it out. I'm not sure that's great here because everyone that's visited your website more or less is interested in what you have to offer. Someone can watch 3 seconds of your video by accident. They could just be scrolling on their phone whilst watching telly. Interesting bit of information is on the TV. They glance up, video plays for 6-7 seconds, whatever. They glance down and they're included. And you think, oh, they didn't even notice it. So I'd go with one of these two options. I think is a little bit better. Once you have selected this, your 15%, the next thing you need to do is choose videos. So here, make sure you've got obviously the right Facebook page selected, and then you could just go through and select, these are just like reels that have been published. So I'm just gonna go through and select as many as you want. You could select all your videos. You could select one video. You could select all the videos within a certain category. You could select so you could have, as I said before, we could have anyone consumed a video of ours on Google Ads, anyone consumed a video of ours on Facebook Ads, 2 separate groups so we can retarget separately. That's just the Facebook page source. We could get people from our Instagram profile. Same sort of situation, right? We've got video views here, so let's go ahead and grab these and create custom audiences from them. We could do from specific campaigns, so videos that we're running in ads, we can also use to create custom audiences from. So there's a number of different options in here, but let's say we're just gonna go with Instagram. Well, we've got a few Facebook ones and a couple of Instagram ones just for demonstration purposes. So these 7 videos, click confirm, And then you can see that retention, because we're in app, Meta is less concerned with privacy issues. We can get away with advertising to more people and keeping them within that for longer. The retention default is 365, and you'll see that's the maximum, but it's also the default, which I think is really, really interesting. So we've got 365, which is what I go with. And then here we go with something like video viewers 365. If you wanted to get more specific, you could then write in, you know, this is within the Google Ads category for our business or whatever it is, just so it means something to you later on. And then you go ahead and select create audience. Don't worry about all this. We're going to talk about that later on. And that is the video viewers custom audience. Okay, so the next custom audience we're going to create, if I click on create audience and custom audience, is the next one down the list, which is lead form. Now, again, I just want to quickly touch on this because, again, not all advertisers are actually going to be able to use this one, but this is basically an option if you are running ads using instant forms, lead forms. So if you're not familiar, when someone clicks on an ad on Facebook or Instagram, instead of being taken through to your website or a landing page, they're presented with an instant form. I've got videos on those if you're interested in, and a lot of advertisers are now using lead forms, instant forms, but we can create custom audience from people who've engaged with our lead forms. So we could go with anyone who opened this form, or people who opened and didn't submit, people who opened and submitted. So you think about the ways that you could retarget with that. So let's say someone who opened but didn't submit, you could advertise that person to try and get them to do it again and actually follow through and submit the form. Let's say the opposite, someone who did open and did submit, perhaps they're now in your sales process where you're trying to, you're having sales calls with them, you send over a proposal, whatever it is that you're looking to do, and you want to try and convince them to convert. You could put a video testimonial from a previous client ad in front of them as a retargeting ad, those people, because they're at the next step. So all sorts of creative things you can do with this setup and with the retargeting. But obviously, I would probably recommend that most advertisers go with anyone who opened this form to try and get people to actually submit the form. I think that's the easiest way to get this up and running. Make sure you've got the right page selected, and then you can just select your lead forms by name. You'll have got these set up and you'll be familiar with these if you've run these campaigns before. If not, I've got videos on all this sort of stuff, or you can just select all and go with the whole option. Okay, then we've got retention. We've got another number. You can see the default is 90 days and the maximum time is 90 days, which is interesting, but there we go. And I would recommend you go with the maximum. So then we need to go ahead and give this a name. So we could call this lead form openers, all forms, because that's the option we selected. And then we go with 90 days, and then we can click create audience, and that one is done. Okay, so a couple more custom audiences that I want to cover because I think they're really important, and well done for sticking with me on this stuff. So create audience, custom audience. The next one I want to talk about is Instagram account. So if we go ahead and select Instagram account and then click next. So we can create a custom audience of anyone that is engaged with our Instagram account before. You can see there are various different options. So obviously make sure you've got the right source, the right Instagram account. You can follow me on Instagram, by the way, at Ben Heath Marketing if you're interested. Events. Anyone who engaged with this professional account is the default. We can go with anyone who started following this professional account, so followers. We can do anyone who visited your profile, people engaged with a post or an ad, saved a post or an ad. This is just everyone, and that's what I recommend most advertisers go with for many of the same reasons we've already discussed. Let's give the biggest possible custom audience. Meta will work it out. Retention is 365, great. And this is a really good one because particularly if you're new and you've only just started advertising, you probably already have a good amount of people who have engaged with your Instagram profile, and then we're going to show you how to do the Facebook page one, the equivalent, in a second. So this audience can be pretty big. You might not have enough people in an email list or a website visitor list yet to be able to actually retarget. With this, you can pretty quickly. So Instagram engages 365 is what we're going to go ahead and call this. Click create audience, and that one is done. And then the last one I want to show you is Facebook page. And I'm not going to come back to this page. There are obviously other options here, but again, they don't apply to most advertisers. A lot of the process is very simple. Just click through, just follow the steps as I've been doing with these other ones. It's not that difficult to work out, but how many of you watching this need to click on AR experience, for example? Not many. In fact, I don't want to select that. I want to select Facebook page. So there we go. So again, make sure you've got the right Facebook page, and then we can go with exactly the same options, basically. There are a few variations, but basically the same options as we've got on the other side. People who follow our page, people who have engaged with our page is the catch-all for everyone, and we've also got people who have done various things. So I would just go with the default here, nice big audience, and then we're going to call this Facebook page engages 365. Create audience, and those are the custom audiences created. Now you may have different ones that you use depending on your business, but I'd basically recommend that all advertisers set up effectively those 7, assuming they apply. I know there's only 6 here, but that's because we've not done email list and customer list separately, because the process is exactly the same. But you would have all website visitors, email list, customer list, Facebook page engagers, Instagram account engagers, video viewers if you're using video, and then lead form openers, engagers if you're using lead forms. Those last 2 would be very much an if. The other ones you want to get in there. Okay, so if we jump back over now to Ads Manager, and I can show you how to put these custom audiences in. Okay, so if we go back into this campaign, go into the editable window, it's gone to the campaign level. We want to jump over to the ad set level even, and then we're going to scroll down and we get to this custom audiences section, and we can now pop in here anything that we had previously if we wanted to retarget. So we could go with all website visitors, etc., etc. Now, when it comes to retargeting, what I'd usually recommend is that you have a separate retargeting ad set, maybe even a separate campaign to your cold audience targeting. You don't want to mix and match these in. And in fact, it doesn't really work to mix and match these in, and I'll explain why in a second. So because we've got a separate retargeting ad set, I think it's best to put in all your retargeting audiences into this one ad set. So we'd go ahead and basically go through and just add all of these ones in that are relevant and available to our business. Now, I'm happy to bundle all these in together because we know that our warm audiences are going to produce the best results from a return on investment standpoint. We often can't spend a huge amount advertising to these people because the audiences are much smaller than the cold audiences that we talked about previously. Because, I mean, who has 11 million people on an email list, right? Not many. So you want to bundle these all in together, and we also don't need to know how each one performs because the performance is so good. So when I talked about the interest, and if I scroll down now, we've got this detailed targeting option of dog walking. I said about you want to separate out the different interests into different ad sets because we want to see which one performs best. We don't need to do that with our warm audience, our custom audiences, and our retargeting because we know these are going to perform better than our cold audiences. We want to spend as much as we can on these people, obviously without bombarding them. No one wants to see the same ad from the same company 10 times a day forever. So we don't need to separate them out, and a larger audience helps. Now, when you go ahead and add in your custom audiences, if you can, most ad accounts can, I would definitely deselect Advantage Custom Audience. Its default is to be on. It says reach people beyond your custom audience when it is likely to improve performance. No, I want this to be a retargeting campaign specifically for retargeting audiences. And again, you may not have this setup where you've just got them all lumped in here. You might have really specific ones like people who have opted in for the webinar but not yet purchased. You don't want your ads to be put in front of, yes, those people, but also anyone else. It wouldn't make any sense to them. It would just be random and not work very well at all. So in those scenarios, you absolutely want to make sure you've got reach people disabled. We're going to capture those in our cold audience ad sets, not in here. Now, when you go ahead and add in your custom audiences, it brings down your audience size massively. So it's very, very important that you leave the rest of everything really open. Look what we've got over here on our audience definition. It basically says estimates vary, unavailable. It's too small. And we've got estimated daily results reach less than 10 people, okay? Because it's got so specific. We've got age range in at 21. So whenever you've got a custom audience in here, I want this as open as possible. There's no need to make this specific. So no interests, no detailed targeting whatsoever, no gender specification. We're just going to go with all no age parameters. We're only retargeting people that have done things like visit our website, watch our videos, visit our Instagram profile, that sort of thing. We want to advertise to all of them. We don't want to miss out. Even if it's one of those scenarios where you're thinking, yeah, but my product's only applicable for this category of people. Well, yeah, but if someone visits your website who doesn't fall into that category, maybe they have a friend or a husband or a daughter or whatever it is that would fit that category. So it still might want to put an ad in front of them because they might be getting research for that person. You know, we've worked in a business before that was only advertising, was interested in students, right? So it's only advertising to people of a certain age. And we found better results by increasing the age range, particularly with things like custom audiences, and I'll explain in a minute, lookalike audiences. And our theory behind as to why was because for a lot of students are going to involve their parents in their decision-making process. So being able to put ads in front of the parents as well to help convince them, you know, which option's the best option for them, that can make a big difference, okay? So just something to think about. So when you're using custom audiences, Everything else needs to be open. When you're creating an ad set with cold audiences, as I showed you before we got into this custom audience section, then you want to be more specific, and those are going to be in separate ad sets, okay? So we've got this as new leads ad sets. We would want to duplicate, and then in the other version, create differences, okay? Hopefully that's very, very clear. Now, one of the things you may have seen when we're creating these custom audiences pop up all the time was lookalike audiences. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back over in all tools and select audiences again, because what we can do with our custom audiences is something really, really cool, and that's use them to create lookalike audiences. So just to quickly explain what a lookalike audience is, the name kind of gives it away. It is a group of people that look very, very similar to another group of people. So let's say, for example, we had our customer list. I know we've called this email list, but let's assume that's a customer list. We can now say to Facebook, these 1,000 people on our customer list, they've bought from us previously. I would like you to analyze those people and create me a list of people that are very similar to that group, because we know that people that are very similar to people that have bought from us previously are highly likely to buy if we put ads in front of them. And lookalike audiences can perform really, really well. And we use lookalike audiences still. A lot of advertisers do. When I did a poll recently, I think about a quarter of the people, lookalike audiences were their best performing options. So definitely something that you want to test. So let's say we want to create a lookalike audience of people that are very similar to our email list or our customer list, whatever. Select that there, click on these 3 little lines and click create lookalike. So you can see up here on the source that example email list has followed through. You can actually create a new source from within here, or you can click into this and it will bring a drop down of like various options that you could go ahead and add in and things like that, okay, depending on what you've got. Then we need to select our audience location. Now you can't get really specific with this, and this throws off a lot of people. So let's say I'm a local business based in Cheltenham. I can't just select Cheltenham in here. What I need to do is create the lookalike audience for the larger area and then further specify what's going on at the ad set level with the location targeting, okay? So if, for example, I'm going to do this in the United Kingdom, I need to enter in the whole of the United Kingdom. So I need to go with the whole United Kingdom. You can't get more specific than that. So let's go with the whole country. And now we need to select a percentage. Now the way this works is that the percentage we select here is the percentage of that country that most closely resembles your source audience. So in this case, our customer list or our email list. So is it the top 1%, the top 2%? Etc, etc. Now, I see a lot of people, and I still get comments like this, where they say, oh, I created a lookalike audience. In the UK, it had 550,000 people in it. Is that good? Is that bad? And I would respond with, it's nothing. That's 1% of the Facebook and Instagram users in the UK. It's always going to be 550,000 because there's about 55 million Facebook and Instagram users in the UK. So these numbers are fixed, right? The trade-off here is, like we talked about previously, the larger the audience size, kind of the better Meta likes that. The smaller, the more specific they are. With the lookalike audience, I would err on the side of specificity. So, because it's going to be more accurate and therefore likely to get you better results. So again, think about that 500,000 mark being your sort of lower end of things. So if we're advertising UK wide, we can get away with a 1% just about. If we were advertising in a country like Ireland with a much smaller population, we need to probably go with a 10%. Because again, it's going to be 10% of the Facebook and Instagram users in the country. If we're advertising locally, and it's going to really bring our audience size down once we add in the location targeting parameters at the ad set level, we really need to think about increasing our audience size. So if we're going to advertise a lookalike audience locally, it's nearly always going to be a 10%. If you were to be advertising somewhere like Australia with, I believe, roughly 25 million people, then again, you're going to want to go with maybe something like 5%. In fact, we can add that in just so I can show you exactly what this looks like, and you'll see how the numbers change. So if I go ahead and select Australia in there, we can see the 10% is, so there's 22 million Facebook and Instagram users, right? So if I go with 5%, we're looking at 1.1 million. We could probably afford to go a little bit less than that, 3%, but you wouldn't want to be going like 1% like we would in the UK, because that's going to be too small. So you might want to go with a 3%, for example. So just think about this in terms of where it is that you're advertising, what it is that you're looking to do, and how that impacts audience size. Obviously, advertising in the US, 1% is going to be absolutely fine because you've got a nice fat audience there. So obviously in the US, because you've got a much larger population, you can go with 1%. It's absolutely fine. Okay, so let's head on over into our ads manager, go back into our campaign again. And we'll go ahead and edit this leads campaign, and we will go back to the ad set level. Okay, if we scroll down to audiences now, So we've created our lookalike audience in audiences. And again, you could create a different lookalike audience based on any of the custom audiences that you create, right? So you don't have to do it based on a customer list. If you haven't got any people in it, you could do it based on people who have engaged with your Instagram profile. Now, what I'd say is that the further down your sales funnel someone had to go in order to make it into your source audience, the better quality that source audience will be when it comes to creating a lookalike audience, which makes sense, right? So a lookalike audience based on people that have actually gone all the way and bought from you is going to perform better than a lookalike audience based on someone that watched a video of yours on Facebook. But there are many, many, many more people usually in the source audiences for people who have watched a video of yours on Facebook or Instagram, engaged with your Instagram account. So there's a trade-off there again. Do you want the larger numbers? Because the larger the source audience, the better it is for Meta, the more accurate the lookalike will be. Or do you want the more specific based on a customer list? It really depends on how many people you've got. If you've got a small customer list at this point, you probably will see better results with the larger options. If you've already got like 10,000 people in a customer list, that's almost certainly going to be a better option. But you can always create a few different options and test. That's absolutely fine. Now, when you're adding a lookalike audience into your ad set, I'm going to go ahead and delete out all these custom audiences. You don't want to do so with other custom audiences in there or other lookalikes. Remember, a lookalike audience is not a warm audience. Everyone thinks it is, they're wrong. It's a cold audience. It's based on a warm audience. So you're taking a warm audience and you're saying create people that are similar to this warm audience, but don't actually include the people in that warm audience in there. It's just similar people. It's completely cold audiences. So you need to treat them like cold audiences. One per ad set and then test appropriately. Don't include custom audiences and lookalike audiences in the same thing, even though they're added in the same search bar, text field, whatever. I think that's where a lot of people get messed up and they end up putting in custom audiences and lookalike audiences and you're not really retargeting and you're not really targeting cold audiences and it's all a mess. So get your lookalike audience added in. I would usually deselect advantage lookalike for the same reasons that I discussed previously. And then we also want this to be nice and open. So this is where a lookalike audience will differ from other cold audience interest targeting, things like that, in that we will leave this open. So we're going to leave the targeting, the age open, the gender open, and the detailed targeting open as well. We're not going to get specific. And that's because the lookalike part of that lookalike audience takes care of all that. It's based on your warm audiences. So we know that the people Meta are going to identify are going to be sort of in the right category and the sort of people we want to reach, okay? So I know this can start to get a little bit confusing, but that's typically how we do it. In terms of structure, we might have a campaign with 3 to 5 different ad sets testing, 1 lookalike, 2 interest targeting options, 1 warm audience, something like that. And then we can see which ones perform best. We're going to leave the warm running all the time. We can pause the underperforming ad sets that are not performing as well, add in new ones to test against the best performers, and that's how we test our different interest targeting options, our different lookalike targeting options, and all that sort of stuff. So those are some of the most common targeting options to talk about. There's one other that we really discussed that is becoming more and more popular by the day, and that is open targeting, right? So open targeting is simply deleting out this lookalike audience and going with absolutely everyone. It's going to give you the largest possible audience. And the advocates of open targeting often say that, well, Meta is so good at working out who we want to advertise to, we should just always go with open targeting, right? We should, why give any specificity? Why miss out on any potential target audience and prospects? We could just give them the total size and see what they can come up with. I think for certain businesses that can work well, okay? So if you have a lot of conversion data in your ad account already, open targeting is likely to perform well for you because Meta knows who is likely to purchase. They know how many times they need to see an ad to purchase, what time of day they're most likely to purchase, what type of person, what do they need to have been doing, what day of the week, all the various things, how old are they, where do they live, all the various things that constitute someone who's likely to purchase. That's already in your ad account, so that's really useful. If you don't have that data, then it's much more likely that open targeting won't work for you because yes, Meta's really good at working out who to target, but if it's a brand new ad account, they don't know who purchases, it's almost like the algorithm can get lost. It takes them so long to work it out for you, whereas you can give them some direction at the beginning with things like lookalike audiences and interest targeting options that can really help narrow it down so they can test within that pool first and then work it out. So if you've got a lot of conversion data already, thousands of conversions in your ad account, open targeting is likely to work really well for you. With a new ad account, not so much. Also, open targeting works best for businesses with really broad appeal. So certain products and services just about everyone's interested in, right? There's like food items that just about everyone eats. A huge percentage of the population are going to be interested in a chocolate bar, that sort of thing. There are other items that are really niche specific, okay? If I'm advertising, soccer boots that only work on a certain type of AstroTurf, that's only going to apply to people that partake in that sport. A product like that just advertised to everyone is far less likely to do well because so many people are going to see that ad, no, boring, skip on. So you don't necessarily want to do that. Whereas, as I said, if you're advertising a chocolate bar or things that have mass broad appeal, it's far more likely to work. So whenever you're doing open targeting, I think about that. When it comes to local businesses, because the audience size is always a lot smaller than it is with national and international businesses, we are far more likely to use open targeting just because of the audience size thing. So if we're advertising somewhere like Cheltenham, 100,000 people, we're just going to use open targeting. We can't use anything else. The population's just not there. The audience size is too small. If we're advertising in a city of London that's got 8-9 million people, we probably test open targeting, but we can also test some other options. If we're advertising in a city of 1.5 million, open targeting is most likely going to be our best performing targeting option. Maybe there's a couple of really broad interests that we could get away with. So that's just something to think about. So when we're testing our different targeting options, often one of our ad sets is going to be testing open targeting if we feel the business meets that criteria. And that's probably one of the things that you've gotten throughout this video, and I encourage you to sort of run with, is that we are going to test lots of different targeting options. Every business is unique. It's really important to work out what works best for certain businesses. I did a poll recently on the best performing cold audiences, and it was like 45% open targeting, 25% lookalikes, and then the remainder was interest. This is the three main categories. So you can really see there's like a really big spread there. So that's why you need to test for your specific business and why it's so important to work out the various combinations that work for you. So I'd really encourage you to have that mindset going into it, not thinking this is the targeting option that works well, but thinking, okay, I've been through this video. I now know how to create and use all these different targeting options. Let's go ahead and work it out. The aside is warm audiences. So we covered all the custom audiences, how to add those in. They're nearly always going to produce great results for you, much better than the cold audiences, and therefore you constantly want to be retargeting them. For me, that is an absolute no-brainer. Now, if you've made it this far in the video, firstly, well done. I know that a low percentage, less than 10% of people a video this long will actually make it to this stage, so well done. If you found this video useful, you probably have. If you made it this far, please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. That would help me out and be much appreciated. And if you've made it this far, you're obviously really serious about your Facebook and Instagram advertising, about getting great results and using it as a thing to push your business forward, in which case I'd strongly recommend you check out this video on scaling. In it, I cover a new Facebook ad scaling technique, and given how seriously you've taken this, I'm sure you're going to be scaling your Facebook ad campaigns up pretty soon. They're going to be producing great results and you want to scale. And here, this video is going to show you how to do it properly, and it's really important you do it properly. So go ahead and check it out, and I'll see you there.